Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. We were downtown Spokane, and I drove about 10 blocks or so, stopping at an old, worn-down-looking brick church. I knew it was there. Everyone knew it was there. It sat a block off the interstate and kitty-corner from a landmark burger joint on the main drag, which spans the entire city north and south. Literally, 50,000 cars a day drive by this church. Everyone living in the area has driven past it hundreds of times. It's been sitting there since I was a kid, even longer. In truth, it's been sitting on that corner since 1905. I can drive an hour any compass direction and mention the big brick church kitty corner from Dick's Burgers downtown, and they say, "The one they tore down a few years back?" "No, the other one that's still standing," I reply. "Oh, I really like the one they tore down. That was a nice building." I've had that conversation 50 times. All the way deep into the Idaho Panhandle, and once while riding four-wheelers way up in the backwoods up along the Canadian border, 2 hours drive north. I've had that conversation a couple of hours drive south while hunting pheasant in the rolling wheat fields of the Palouse. Everyone knows the church I'm talking about, but I've only met one person who ever knew the name of the church. I didn't know the name of the church, and I'd probably passed it over 1,000 times in my life. I pulled into the parking lot situated in the roughest part of downtown, got out of the car, and went to the first door I saw. It was locked. So was the next one, and then the next, and the next. I went all the way around the building, knocking on all 6 doors. I noticed the name, First Covenant, on the far side when I rounded the corner after doorway number 4. I was confused by that, because I had been part of the Evangelical Covenant denomination when I planted a church in 2000. Usually the name Covenant is associated with us, but not always. I had met the superintendent of the Pacific Northwest region for the denomination in Denver several years before and asked him if there were any Covenant churches in Spokane. I was interested to know if the denomination I was now a part of in California had any sister churches in my hometown. But being a superintendent, he was used to pastors asking him about job opportunities. So he understood my question to be whether or not there was a pastoral position available in Spokane. He informed me, "No, we don't have anything in Spokane," meaning no jobs available. I misunderstood, thinking he meant we have no Covenant churches in Spokane. So I had spent the last several years believing that there was no connection with my denomination in my hometown. When I saw the church name for the first time, I thought it might be a coincidence or a different covenant. At the 6th and final door, down a little alleyway with broken glass which smelled like pee, I saw a buzzer and hit it. I stood for a bit and there was no answer. As I was walking away, a silver-haired guy answered the door. "Can I help you?" Since I was confused by the name, I opened with, "Is this an Evangelical Covenant church?" "Yes," he said. "You are part of the Evangelical Covenant Church headquartered in Chicago?" I asked, dumbfounded, and then continued, "But I was informed there were no Covenant churches in Spokane," I stammered. "That's because we're an embarrassment and they don't want to admit we're here," he replied. "How long have you been here?" 120 years, he matter-of-factly informed me. "Well, I should think they might have heard about you by now," I thought to myself. We talked for several minutes, and he had been there for 18 years. He invited me into a little cubby of a reception area with war-weary stained carpet and 2 to 3 desks too many packed into the confined space. It had stacks of paper and old yellow-page phone books piled high everywhere you looked. There was a ratty old couch that Goodwill would have thrown away if one tried to donate it. The paint was dingy white. The one wallpapered wall was peeling in several spots. He gave me a grand tour of the place. It was old, dirty, run down, dark, depressing, unkept, untouched, unrepaired, and unloved. The people calling the shots must have been hoarders because every little room of the poorly designed space was packed with old junk. No one wanted to be responsible for throwing something away that might turn out to be needed later. Every piece of ugly, worn-out furniture that folks got sick of at home, they brought down to donate to the church. The paint looked original in both the 1950 building and the 1929 children's wing. The computer at the desk looked like it might have been brand new the same year the operating system came out. It was running Windows 95. After the tour, I told him I was new in town and looking for a ministry position. I thought he would know someone hiring or know of something I could apply for since he'd been pastoring in the area for almost 20 years. I handed him a leftover resume from my year and a half looking for work.
"Oh, we're looking for a worship leader," he said excitedly. Fat chance, I thought. I had seen the pipe organ in the choir loft.
"Oh, well, good luck on your search," I replied in a hopeful tone. "But if you know of some other job, feel free to pass my name along." And I parted company. I returned to a smiling wife still sitting in the car a half an hour later. "Well?" she asked with a smirk on her face. "They have a job opening," I replied in the most disgusted tone I could muster. She laughed. Meanwhile, all the other job opportunities I was exploring fell through. All the other connections failed to materialize into anything at all. I applied for some ministry jobs out of desperation, but I think I scared and intimidated a couple of the other pastors with my experiences, and other churches found themselves cutting back in the tough economy and not replacing their positions. The First Covenant pastor and I had coffee. It turned out they were almost out of business. He was buying the parsonage and generating a hefty amount of cash for the church to throw at a staff position for worship and outreach to help them revitalize and give them one more chance at a future. They were down to about 30 people. He had performed 70 funerals in his time there. I was amazed that he had a congregation twice the size under the ground as above it. Their last bit of savings was running out. Against my better judgment, personal ambitions, and emotional desires, I spoke and led worship the following Sunday as a candidate. The pastor did announcements. They voted 38-1 to hire me. Obviously, extra people came out that Sunday to see what I was all about. I started working there 2 weeks later. We were in a rough part of town with a homeless men's shelter a block away and a homeless women's shelter a block the other direction. Spokane Mental Health was half a block down the street. Prison work release apartments were behind us in the alley. A men's drug rehab shelter was located across the parking lot, and numerous little dirty slumlord apartments surrounded us. The area also boasted several run-down transient hotels where convicts stayed when they were released back into society. Addicts, drunkards, and prostitutes completely surrounded us. We got a regular flow of transients into church. My second Sunday there, one came through to meet with the pastor to explain that he couldn't get his stuff out of the Howard Johnson across the street because Greyhound had bought the room for him and his name wasn't on the receipt. He was a little drunk and said he needed prayer. The pastor began to pray, but he was interrupted when the transient raised his arms to heaven and in a loud and slurred voice cried out, "Oh, Lord, I've been watching this church from across the street all day. Help them do what they're trying to do. Give them help, Lord, to become what they're supposed to become. Help them see what you want them to see and do what you want them to do." He sloshed to a close as his arms came swinging down at his sides. Listen, my friend, when a drunken, homeless vagabond prays that God help you, you know you're in a pretty bad way. This was my welcome to my upwardly mobile career. I kept hearing, "God has a plan, though," so that should count for something. I knew we had about 1 year to turn things around. But then again, my last 1-year gig lasted 4 years. Little did I know or expect that this 1-year gig would find me in that building holding down a pastoral job for 6 more years.